We're going to see. All right. So, today, in your table of contents, I want you to put 4-4. Comparing decimals and fractions. I'm going to bring you this paper. I don't want you to take this paper in yet, okay? Because I want to talk about a few things before we go any farther. All right. Our indicator for today, we're venturing away from that big indicator that has the little tiny ones underneath. And we have talked about this one before, okay? We talked about this one before when we ordered decimal numbers, all right? When we started from left to right to compare decimals and we put them in a list. Y'all remember doing that in chapter 3? We talked about that for this indicator then. Today, we're going to talk about this in terms of comparing decimals and fractions and comparing just fractions, okay? Now, on your paper, I have your focus statement for you. I can compare decimals and fractions, all right? So that is very simple. That says what you can do at the end of today's lesson. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to compare fractions, okay? And the reason I want to start with fractions is because the last 2 lessons we've talked about greatest common factor, okay? Greatest means what? Most. Common means same, what they have alike. And factor means something that you can
differentiate,
multiply to get a number. Those are the numbers that you multiply to get another number, okay? So, the highest number, same number that are factors. The 2 numbers share, okay? So, because we talked about that in the previous 2 lessons, I want to talk about that first. I want to use that first here, okay? So, we have all of our things that we need. These are some important words, and I am going to talk about what the word benchmark and what the word convert mean. But I'm going to wait until we get down here to the decimal part, okay? So here, the first one. You can go ahead and tape this in, or you can use it to write on and then tape it in a second, okay? But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to compare fractions, okay? And the first way we're going to do it, is we're going to use a common denominator, okay? And when we find a common denominator, what we're doing is we are using the GCF of 2 numbers, okay? We're using the greatest common factor of 2 numbers when we are comparing 2 fractions using simplifying. I'm sorry. We're not doing common denominators first. We're simplifying. I'm sorry. I looked at it wrong. So, I am going to write here, but I'm also going to write on the left because there's not enough room over here for me to do my work, all right? So we are going to compare 15/50ths and 3/10ths. And I'm going to fix this over here so I can write on it. And the first way that we're going to use is to simplify. Can I simplify either one of those fractions? Which one? 15/50ths. What can I divide 15 and 50 by? 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 50 divided by 5 is 10. Now, I have 3/10ths and 3/10ths. Those fractions are what?
Equal.
They're equal. So one way we can compare fractions is to simplify the fraction. okay? And you may remember simplifying fractions with Miss Tiller last year because she did have you simplify fractions when you were adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, okay? The second one is using common denominators. So I'm going to change my color just so we can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to do, let's see, 3/7 and 13/28, okay? 3/7 and 13/28. And I'm going to write those over here just because there's not enough room for me to do my work over here because my pen is so big. 7 and 28. Is there a common denominator for those two? What is it?
4.
I can multiply by 4. Is 28 a multiple of 7?
Yes.
Yes. So I can multiply. Callie was ahead of herself. 7 times 4 is 28. If I do it to the bottom, I have to what? Do it to the top. 3 times 4 is
12.
12. Now can we compare these fractions?
Yes.
They have the same denominator, but their numerator is different. I can compare 12 and 13. So what symbol is going to go there? Greater than, less than, or equal to?
Greater than.
12 is what to 13?
Less than.
Less than. So 3/7 is less than 13/28. Okay? Now, my favorite way, okay? Every time I have to compare fractions, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, this is my go-to method, okay? It's the way that I usually do it. So, if I have, and I'm going to use the same one, and I'm going to do it over here, 3/7 and 13/28. We can cross multiply, okay? How many people in here have ever cross multiplied fractions before? Yay! So this should be a review, right? So if we do 7 times 13, 13 times 7, 3 times 7 is 21, carry my 2. 7 times 1 is 7 plus 2 is 9. So I'm going to write my 91 up there on the top, okay? Then I'm going to do 28 times 3. So 28 times 3. 3 times 8 is, so write my 4, carry my 2. 3 times 2 is 7, 8. So it's 84. 84 is what to 91? Less than. So 3/7 is what to 13/28? Less than. Is that the same thing we got here when we found the common denominator? Yes. Okay. I'm going to be honest. Because I'm lazy sometimes and I want to get things done in a hurry, I don't want to figure out if I can simplify. Because what if I had simplified and the denominators have been different? I don't really want to figure out if I can find a common denominator. I would just rather cross multiply because I know that every single time when I'm comparing fractions, I can always cross multiply to compare them, okay? So, a fist to 5 of how comfortable you feel comparing fractions using one of those 3 ways. The last one that I just did. That's my favorite way too, Albon. Okay, this part of the lesson, what I gained from your classmates earlier, is that part's a review, right? That part you've done before. The next part is a part that might not be a review, okay? So, comparing decimals and fractions. The first way is we are going to use a benchmark, all right? A benchmark, that word is probably something that you aren't very familiar with. but you probably use a benchmark all the time. You just don't realize it, okay? It's when we compare something to something else. So, I'm going to use a non-mathematical example, all right? Yesterday, I went for a walk. My boys and I left my house. We walked through the woods to my sister's house. And she and her little girl were outside, and they decided they wanted to go for a walk with us, so we kept walking. And we were walking through the woods on a path, okay, on a little road. And we saw turkey tracks. How many of y'all have ever seen turkey tracks before? And they look like they have 3 big toes and then 1 toe that comes out of the back like this, okay? And y'all, this turkey track was huge, okay? So I stuck my foot beside it. And Carrie Mack stuck her foot on the other side of it. And my sister took a picture. Why did we put our feet beside it? Aiden.
To compare your foot to the side just to show how big it was.
Yes. To compare our feet to the turkey's foot just to see how big it was, okay? Now, when I sent that picture to my husband, he knows how big my foot is, or about, okay? So his response was, he's grown, meaning he's what?
Huge.
He's big, okay? My sister sent the picture to her husband because he knows how big Carrie Mack's foot is. He called her to say, where did you see that big turkey foot? Okay? Because they knew about how big our feet were and could compare that turkey's foot. Have we seen that turkey? No. But we could use what we know to compare something that we don't know. Okay? And that's kind of what a benchmark is. All right? So, I'm going to give you an example for a benchmark, and we're going to see, so you can see more of what I'm talking about. And I'm going to flip this just because it gets too busy up here and it's harder to tell. So we are going to compare 78/100 and 1/6. And I'm going to write that over here so everybody can see it. 78/100 to 1/6. Now, if I were to compare that to 0, 1/2, or 1, 78/100 is closest to what? 1. 1/6 is closest to what? 1/6.
It's closest to 0.
It's closest to 0. Okay? Because if we look right here, 0, 1/2, and 1. Because how much is 1/2 if we're looking at 6?
6.
You got to have 3 for it to be 1/2. Okay? So, is 78/100 greater than, less than, or equal to 1/6?
Greater than.
It's greater than. Because 78/100 is close to 1. Okay? 1/6 is not even close to 1/2. All right? We know how much 1/2 is. All right? So, your first attempt should be to use a benchmark every time. All right? If a benchmark doesn't work, then you can try one of the other 2 methods. Yes, ma'am.
You did your signs 2 different ways.
Oh, sorry, because I was talking. Sorry. All right, thank you. Now, this next way is not my favorite way, okay? I'm just going to tell you. I don't do this way unless I absolutely have to. And that is to convert the decimal to a fraction. So, if we are comparing 2/5 to 35/100, okay? So, I'm going to write that over here. 2/5 to 35/100. And you're going to say, but Miss Bird, it's easy to change 35/100 to a decimal. How many people agree with that? Is it easy to change 35/100 to a decimal? To a 35/100 from a decimal to a fraction. How do I write that as a fraction? 35/100. What do I do?
35 over 100.
Does that say the same thing? Yeah, it does. Now, can I compare 5 and 100? No. So what do I need? What can I do to this fraction? Simplify. What can I divide 35 and 100 by? 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So now we have 2/5 and 7/20. Can we compare those? What do we do now? We just did it. What can we do? What's mine and Alvon's favorite way? Cross multiply. 5 times 7 is 35. 20 times 2 is 2 times 2 is
It's 40.
it's 40. 40 is what to 35? Greater. So 2/5 is greater than 35/100. Okay? That's a lot of work, okay? That's a lot of steps. And as I've told you before, the more steps you have, the easier it is to make a mistake, okay? The less steps we have, the less likely it is to make a mistake, all right? Now, number 3, convert the fraction to a decimal. This is the one that your classmates had not done before, okay? So I'm going to assume you have not converted a fraction to a decimal before. Is that true? True? So we're going to take this kind of baby steps at a time. And we're going to use this same one, 2/5 and 35/100, okay? 2/5 and 35/100. I'm going to give you a second to write that, and then I'm going to go here because it's going to take me a little more paper than just that little bit, okay? So we have 2/5 and we have 35/100. When we have a fraction, 2/5, is that greater than or less than 1? Two-fifths. Less than 1, okay? So I want you to remember that. When you change a fraction to a decimal, if it is less than 1 here, your answer must be what? Less than 1. Now, 2/5 can also be read as, you can take that fraction symbol and write it as a division sign. 2 divided by 5. Okay? 2 divided by 5. I still don't want to do it that way. How do I want to do it? When I divide. Yep, Kelly did that. What's going to go inside my box? 2 divided by 5. You want to put 5 on the inside because that's going to make your work what? Easier. But does the 5 go on the inside? No. What's going to go on the inside? The 2. The first number goes inside. We know that our answer is going to be less than 1. So I'm going to go ahead and put my decimal because I know that I can't do 2 divided by 5. It's not going to work. So 20 divided by 5 is what? 4. 4 times 5 is 20. So 2/5 is the same thing as 4/10. Can I compare 4/10 and 35/100? 4/10 is what to 35/100?
Greater than.
Greater than. Is that the same thing we got when we compared the fractions? Yeah. All right, we're going to practice a couple. Go back to here. All right, the first thing is we always try to use a what? The turkey foot. What do we always try to use? A benchmark. We always try to use a benchmark. So let's try that first. We have 3/8 and we have 65/100. 3/8, is that less than or greater than a half?
Less than.
Less than a half. 65/100, is that less than or greater than a half?
Greater.
Greater. So that means that 3/8 is what to 65/100? If this is less than a half and this is more than a half, what symbol has to go here? Less than. Has to be less than. Has to be. Always, oh, I didn't want to do that. Always try to use a benchmark first. All right, let's try this one. We have 14/100 and 7/9. And I'm going to rewrite it because I don't like my fraction looking like that. 14/100. Less than or greater than a half? Less than, way less. 7/9. Less than or greater than half?
Greater than.
Greater than. So that means 14/100 is what to 7/9? Less than. All right, I want a fist of 5 of how comfortable you feel. And I know everybody's probably not at a 5. How comfortable you feel using a benchmark. Okay. We're gonna practice it, okay? We're gonna practice. The last one that I have here, I've got 7/8 and 2/3. Alvon, what's our favorite way to do fractions? To what? This is what Alvon did. What does that mean? Cross multiply. 8 times 2 is 16. 3 times 7 is, so 21 is what to 16? Greater than. So 7/8 is greater than 2/3.